coming up next on Wednesday Word with Pastor Green.
It's really going to be based on what we said, because what we said came from the heart. And because God judges the heart, and what we say comes from that source of the heart, that's where final judgment comes from. The accountability for believers is so significant, particularly in the day and age in which we live, because we see so many things happening by the stroke of a pen, by speeches made by pundits and political leaders. We even see Greetings, beloved of God. We welcome you to our Wednesday Word. As you can tell, we've changed locations because we want to look at the beauty and nature of God, but also why all of this takes us to why God believes and God teaches and God has demonstrated that accountability for believers and for those who are His children are so important. My brothers and sisters, we are right here on the banks of the Chattahoochee River. And although it's a warm, humid day, it is a beautiful day. And it just shows us how wonderful God is. And so as we look at our lesson in this next installment of our Wednesday Word, accountability and what God has to say about it and why accountability is important, I want to take you to Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. It says, Jesus stated that every idle or careless word we speak will be discussed by God to each of us on the day of judgment. In other words, what Jesus was telling his disciples and those who are following him, that there's going to come a time that the words that we speak, the statements that we make, God is going to discuss it with us, but not in the way that we think he's going to discuss it. It's really going to be a discussion where God says to us, these are the things that occurred. This is what was said. And now judgment is at the door. So Jesus stated this to his disciples to give them direction and to give them warning, but also encouragement to be careful of the things that we say, to be careful of the words that we use, because it's important to God that we are accountable. We are accountable not only for the lives that we live, but we are accountable for the tongues and the words that are being used. What we say can make or break ourselves or others. As a matter of fact, because on the day of judgment, when God gives his final decree, it's really going to be based on what we said, because what we said came from the heart. And because God judges the heart, and what we say comes from that source of the heart, that's where final judgment comes from. The accountability for believers is so significant, particularly in the day and age in which we live, because we see so many things happening by the stroke of a pen, by speeches made by pundits and political leaders. We even see it sometimes in our churches in various settings that people take the stage. The light is on, the mic is hot, and they say things that are not godly. They say things in an attempt to elicit response, but not godly response. These are not the times for believers to go off the rail and fall down the cliff. This is the time where we have to manage and monitor our words, our tones, our approach to handling conflict, because all of us will be held accountable. But then in the Old Testament, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, the Lord spoke to the prophet Samuel to tell him, while a man, watch this, looks at the person that's on the outside, the Lord focuses his attention most on what's on the heart. In other words, what the prophet writes to us as he is teaching and also trying to help nurture David as king, based on what the Lord has said, that our hearts really do reveal our true intentions. Our true intentions play out by how we conduct ourselves. There are people in our world who demonstrate on a very, very consistent and regular basis that they are out to hurt others. The secular word is called a predator. But I want to suggest to you that while the Bible does not use that word predator, it does suggest that there are people who have conditioned their minds and their hearts in such a way that God allows them to become reprobate in mind, and then he turns them away. He gives them up. So to keep David from falling into that trap, he is warned, he is taught, he is encouraged by the prophet to guard your heart, guard your words. In all absolute ability that you have within your ability to handle it, conduct yourself in a way that honors God. Because there are going to be times in our humanity that we may have a moment where we make a mistake. But we don't want our life to be a mistake. We don't want our life to become a pattern of mistakes, because if it becomes a pattern of mistakes, then when God holds us accountable, he holds us accountable for our whole life and not one or two moments of error. One thing that is important about accountability is that in our society today, God is looking at the heart. There's something to be desired for a man or a woman who seeks to do those things out of their heart that are pleasing to God. That level of accountability is not only sacred and accounted in high esteem by God, but as we know that in the last days in which we're living in, that we have to be people that when we say and we speak and we act, that we see God, that people see God's light shining from us, that we're lifting him up in what we do, that he's being glorified, that he's being honored, that he's being worshiped in spirit and in truth. My brothers and sisters, accountability is so important, because if you go from Genesis to Revelation, God had a consistent message that there is a day coming, there is a season coming, that all mankind will be held accountable. The question is accountability important to you? I want to suggest it should be important to all of us. Not because we're afraid of God, because we have the fear and admonition of a sovereign, loving God that loves us so much that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish but have everlasting life. In that, there's accountability, because if we love God, and God has always shown his love to us, then we don't mind being held accountable for our actions. But ultimately, we want to meet the terms of his accountability, that he will say one day, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." God bless you, and may he keep you, and we'll see you on our next lesson.
Join us again next week as we continue to dive deeper in the Word of God. Thank you for listening. And until next time, be transformed by the renewing of your mind.